"Get up, old man," I said. "Get up, or I'll tase you. This is your final warning." The voice was sharp-coated in an impatient arrogance, slicing through the sacred hush of Oak Haven Public Library. Elias Thorne, all 93 years of him, blinked slowly. The words floated into his mind like fish through cloudy water. He'd been deep in the comforting verses of Tennyson, his usual refuge on quiet afternoons. His hand, wrinkled and brittle with age, still rested on the open book. Before he could register the aggressive tone, before his aged body could even consider standing, a sudden pain ignited in his chest. It was as if an invisible fist clamped around his heart. A sharp, ugly, crackling sound, like dry twigs catching fire, filled the room. A gasping breath escaped his lips. It was his own. The world swayed. Rows of books turned into smeared colors. Darkness followed. His cheek met the hard, unfeeling floor. The smell of old books and waxy linoleum filled his senses. His book, his faithful companion, slipped from his reach. The last thing he saw before everything went black was the polished black boot of the officer standing above him. A smirk, cruel and unbothered, twisted the young man's face. A frail, elderly man, a poet's soul sitting quietly in a public library, was treated like a criminal. If you believe that this kind of treatment toward our elders, especially those who have given everything, is a stain on our society, comment. Respect, Elias Thorne lived by routine. He was a remnant of another time, a man of steady pace in a world that had long outpaced him. 93 years had carved stories across. His face, tales of pain, joy, hardship, and quiet victory. His frame was bent, his steps careful. Yet in his eyes, clouded though they were, remained a flicker of light, the last flame of a spirit that had seen nearly 100 years of change. His clothes were always clean, though worn, signs of a life lived simply, not lavishly. His voice, when heard, was gentle, low, and never raised. To most people, he was just another old man, easy to ignore, easy to forget. But within that fragile shell was a legacy of courage, a history few could grasp. His present life was modest and routine, a tiny, tidy apartment, solitary strolls through the park, and his daily walk to Oak Haven Public Library. It was his sanctuary, a place where the ghosts of war and loss faded, drowned by the silent comfort of a million written voices. He never came to bother anyone. He came to find peace, to lose himself. In the arms of literature, the same embrace that had once kept him alive during unimaginable times. He would spend hours in the same worn chair near the history section, sometimes reading, sometimes dozing. The soft rhythm of turning pages a lullaby for his tired soul. The librarians knew him. Mrs. Henderson, the kind older librarian, often brought him a glass of water, her smile one of the few acts of kindness in his otherwise quiet world. Elias never asked for anything. He didn't expect much. He was simply Elias Thorne, a quiet, forgotten man with a lifetime of stories locked inside. That afternoon was like all the others. The library buzzed with its normal, gentle energy, the clicking of keyboards, pages turning, whispers floating. Elias had found a book of war poems, verses that stirred something buried deep inside him. He read and read, his eyes blurring. Maybe he nodded off. It happened. Age made resisting sleep a losing battle. He didn't hear the closing announcements. His hearing aids often failed him. The next thing he felt was a shadow. 2 police officers stood over him, their faces impatient, their postures confrontational. "Sir, the library's closing." "You need to leave," Officer Miller said, his voice louder than necessary. Elias blinked, confused. "Oh, I beg your pardon, officer. I must have lost track of time," he said, trying to gather himself. His movements were slow, stiff. "Yeah. Well, time ran out an hour ago, Grandpa," sneered Officer Davies, tapping his foot. "We got a call. Loitering. Failure to vacate." A flicker of offense sparked in Elias, but he kept his voice even. I assure you, officers, I meant no harm. I was simply reading. He motioned toward his book. Miller sighed, exasperated. Look, we don't have time for this. Just grab your stuff and go. Now. The tone cut like a blade. Elias was being treated like clutter, something to be swept away. He tried to rise, but dizziness hit. A common curse these days. He grabbed the armrest to steady himself. Just a moment, please, he murmured, his breath shallow. To Officer Davies, this was defiance. A moment? We've given you plenty of moments. You deaf or just stubborn? The tension thickened like fog. But Elias, frail though he appeared, had a spine forged in fire. He wouldn't be bullied, not now, not ever. He stared directly at Davies, his voice calm, yet steady. Young man, there's no need for such disrespect. I am complying. But his slow movement didn't suit them. Davies stepped in closer, hand resting on his taser. Disrespect? You're obstructing us, old man. We got better things to do than babysit you. Miller, still tense but less hostile, added, Sir, please, let's not make this worse. Just come with us. Trouble? Elias had never caused trouble. He had lived through trouble, faced it, beat it, but never started it. What he felt now was exhaustion, not just in his bones, but in his soul. Being treated this way in a place of peace for simply reading. It was soul-crushing. He made another effort to rise. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the fabric of the chair. Just as he was nearly upright, Davies misread the struggle. That's it. You're coming with us one way or another. He reached for Elias's arm. Elias pulled back, not out of aggression, but instinct. A lifetime of defending his space had taught him this reflex. Do not touch me, Elias said, voice quiet, but now firm. To Davies, this was the final insult. His face darkened. Power flickered in his eyes. You're resisting arrest, old man. I warned you. The threat fell heavy in the air. From behind the desk, Mrs. Henderson watched in growing horror. Officers, please. He's just an old man. He means no harm. But they didn't listen. Davies drew his taser. The yellow and black of it glared against the soft colors of the library. Last chance, Grandpa. Get up. Hands behind your back. Or you'll regret it. Elias looked at the taser, then at the officers. Face so young, so sure of his authority. There was no fear in Elias's eyes. Only sadness. He had faced real fear, real war, real violence. This was pathetic. I am not resisting, Elias said, voice raspy. I am simply old, but his quiet dignity was mistaken for challenge. He's not complying, Davies snapped. Light him up. It wasn't a command to Miller. It was a justification to himself. Before Miller could speak, before Elias could even take another breath, Davies lunged. He pressed the taser to Elias's thin chest. Get up, old man. I said get up, or I'll tase you. Final warning. The words were a death sentence. Pain, electricity, a crackle. Elias's body convulsed violently. A raw scream tore from his throat. His legs buckled. He collapsed. His tweed jacket snagged on the chair, and from his pocket something fell. Metallic, clinking sharply as it hit the floor. A pair of military dog tags, aged, nearly unreadable, but still clear enough. His book, Tennyson's Idylls of the King, flew from his grip. Its pages fanned like wings, snapped at the spine. The sound of Elias's body hitting the floor echoed across the silent library. Davies took a step back, taser in hand, a mixture of pride and creeping regret on his face. Miller stared, horrified. Davies, what did you do? He's 93 years old? Mrs. Henderson screamed. He's 93! She ran to Elias's side. Mr. Thorne, can you hear me? No response. His eyes were shut, face pale. Only a faint, trembling breath hinted that he was still alive. The dog tags lay nearby, unnoticed by the officers who now exchanged worried glances. Mrs. Henderson, through tears, noticed them. She reached down and picked them up. Her fingers closed around the cold metal. She read the name. Thorne Elias. Below it, a service number, and something else, something official. Her mind raced. She'd once seen an old photo in his bag. A young man in uniform among other soldiers, all solemn, all brave. She hadn't thought much of it then. Now that image struck her like lightning, still kneeling, still shaking. She grabbed the phone behind the desk. This was not just a frail old man. This was a hero. Her trembling fingers struggled with the buttons. She didn't dial 911 for an ambulance, even though that was her first instinct. Instead, a stronger, more urgent impulse led her to call a number listed under Community Contacts, a liaison with the local Veterans Affairs. "Yes," she whispered into the phone, urgency trembling in her voice. "It's Martha Henderson from the Oak Haven Library. There's been a terrible incident. It's Elias Thorne." "Yes, that Elias Thorne, an officer." He tased him outside. The faint wail of a single siren began in the distance, but was soon low, joined by many more, different, deeper, more commanding than the usual police or ambulance tones. Within 5 minutes, the calm suburban road in front of Oak Haven Public Library had transformed. It started with one police cruiser, likely Miller, and Davies reporting the scene. But then came a sound far more imposing. First one, then two, then a procession of black SUVs, lights flashing but sirens eerily silent, as if honoring the seriousness of their task. They boxed in the police vehicle. Several unmarked sedans followed, and most astonishingly, 2 olive-drab military police vehicles arrived. Their doors opened in perfect sync. Men in sharp uniforms and dark suits stepped out, moving with precision, their expressions grave. From the lead vehicle, a polished black command car with flags mounted on its fenders, emerged a figure that exuded pure authority. Tall, with impeccable posture and the stars of a general on his chest, his ice-like eyes scanned the scene, bewildered local officers, a gathering crowd, the quiet front of the library. Officer Miller and Officer Davis stood near their cruiser, trying to explain the situation to a confused sergeant. Their voices were high-pitched and defensive. "He was resisting, Sarge. I swear." "He wouldn't comply," Davies insisted, his former arrogance melting into anxious perspiration. The general walked past them without a word. His team spread out to secure the area. With determined purpose, he approached the library entrance. Mrs. Henderson, standing in the doorway, saw him approach and felt both fear and deep relief. His expression was stormy. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. He already knew. Tension gripped the air, charged with a silent power on the verge of explosion. The general stepped into the library, his polished boots echoing against the wooden floor. His eyes, trained for combat zones, instantly took in the scene. The old man on the floor, Mrs. Henderson kneeling beside him, her face streaked with tears. A discarded book. The lingering sting of taser discharge in the air. Then his eyes landed on the dog tags in Mrs. Henderson's extended hand. He stopped in his tracks. For a moment, the steel in his demeanor faltered. His face shifted from disbelief to horror to a heartbreaking recognition. He advanced, his steps now burdened with emotion, shaking the quiet library's very foundation. He knelt, not with the creak of age, but with the reverence of a soldier honoring a legend. "Elias," he whispered, his once commanding voice thick with emotion. Gently, he accepted the dog tags from Mrs. Henderson. His strong fingers traced the worn engraving. "Elias Thorne," he murmured. Then louder, firm, resonant, and aching. "Sergeant Major Elias Thorne?" His gaze rose and locked with Elias's faintly conscious eyes. The old man's eyelids fluttered. "Sergeant Major," the general repeated, his voice trembling. "It's me. It's Michael. Michael Sterling." Elias's eyes began to focus. Understanding flickered. Memory returned. A faint nod, barely perceptible. The general's face twisted with sorrow and rage. He turned his icy stare toward Miller and Davis, who had followed, and now stood frozen at the entrance, pale with dread. "Do you have any idea," he said, voice low and lethal, "any concept of who this man is? He didn't wait for an answer. Rising to his full height, clutching the dog tags like a sacred artifact, he thundered, "This man!" His voice rang through the library like a judge's gavel. "Is Sergeant Major Elias Thorne. He served this country for 35 years. 35 years, his voice cracked. He fought at Normandy. He was at the Chosin Reservoir. He completed 3 tours in Vietnam. This man pulled wounded soldiers from burning tanks under enemy fire. He saved my father's life in Korea, earning the Distinguished Service Cross. He mentored countless soldiers, including a terrified second lieutenant named Michael Sterling, who wouldn't be alive if not for his guidance, courage, and unwavering sense of duty." The general's chest rose and fell, overcome with emotion. "He has more medals for valor than you have hairs on your chin," he growled at Davies. "He's stared death in the face more times than you've had hot meals, and you tased him for reading a book." The weight of his words was suffocating. Miller and Davies stood like they'd been hit by lightning, faces colorless. Davies opened his mouth but closed it again, choking on his own breath. Miller simply stared, wide-eyed, a dawning horror in his expression. Mrs. Henderson wept, no longer just for Elias, but for the cruel ignorance that had brought them here. Paramedics from the general's convoy rushed forward to tend to Elias. The general stepped back, his eyes never leaving the old soldier's face. He watched them assess him, his own face etched with conflicting emotions, relief, fury, reverence. "Give him the best care," he told the lead paramedic, his voice still tight. "Only the best. He's being transported to Fort Hamilton's military hospital. I'll personally oversee his transfer." Then, turning his wrath toward the officers, "You two," he said, his voice now terrifyingly calm, "are a disgrace to your uniforms, to any uniform. You assaulted a national hero, a man whose sacrifice gave you the right to wear that badge you clearly aren't fit to hold." He took a step closer. They flinched. "Your sergeant is outside. Your chief is on the way. And the Department of Defense will conduct its own inquiry. Mark my words, you will answer for this." He paused, letting the weight of his gaze crush them. "You mistook a lion for a lamb. You judged a man by his worn coat and slow steps, and revealed only your own pitiful inadequacy." Elias, now slightly propped up by a medic, offered the general a weak smile. "Michael," he rasped, barely audible, "always dramatic." The general's hard features melted into tenderness. He knelt beside him again. "Just saving you one." "More time, Sergeant Major," he said, a soft smile breaking through his fierce composure. His eyes glistened. "Rest now. We'll take care of the rest." The aftermath came fast. Elias Thorne was transported not to a local hospital, but to Fort Hamilton's specialized cardiac unit under General Sterling's orders. Miller and Davies were immediately suspended. Their badges and weapons were taken. On the spot by a pale, shaken police chief who looked as though he'd swallowed glass. Oak Haven Library became the center of media attention. Hidden Sparks coverage, along with a bystander's phone video of General Sterling's fiery speech, went viral, sparked a national conversation about elder respect and how we treat veterans. The story of Sergeant Major Elias Thorne, quiet old man from the library, became a symbol, a legend, a warning against rash judgments. Within a week, the Oak Haven Police Department introduced sweeping reforms, mandatory de-escalation training, especially on how to engage with the elderly and veterans. Miller and Davies faced a disciplinary hearing and were discharged. Their law enforcement careers ended. The library didn't erect a grand statue. Elias would have loathed that. Instead, a modest plaque was placed by his favorite chair in honor of Sergeant Major Elias Thorne, a reader, a soldier, a hero. May we never judge a book by its cover, nor a hero by his humble cloak. After several days of observation and the doting care of military doctors and one particularly relieved general, Elias was released. Weary? Yes, but deeply resilient. He returned home. His quiet life now carried the quiet power of public reverence. The disrespect had wounded him, but The love that followed helped heal. General Sterling's fierce loyalty, the community's awakening, had been a balm to his soul. This incident reminded Elias and the world that true honor lives not in medals, but in quiet strength, in the courage to endure, and the grace to forgive. It reminded us that heroes walk among us, unseen, uncelebrated, that the most powerful stories live in silent, humble lives. The story of Elias Thorne is a timeless lesson. Respect is not earned by age, attire, or rank. It is owed especially to those whose sacrifices carved the freedoms we enjoy. We must learn to look deeper, because in the quietest souls dwell the greatest courage. The value of a life isn't dulled by age or circumstance. It is immortal, etched in legacy. Let us choose to see with wiser eyes, lest we, too, mistake a lion for a lamb, the final image. Weeks later, Elias sits peacefully in his old seat at Oak Haven Public Library, a different poetry book in his lap. A teenager approaches shyly, recognizing him from the news. "Excuse me, sir," he asks. "Is it all true?" Elias looks up, a gentle smile forming. He doesn't boast of medals or war. He closes his eyes, opens them slowly, and replies, "What's true, young man, is that every life has a story worth hearing, and every person deserves to be treated with kindness." The teen nods, a new wisdom dawning, and walks away. Elias returns to his poetry, a silent guardian of dignity and memory, finally reading in peace for more stories that uncover hidden heroes and champion timeless values of dignity and respect. Stay with Hidden Sparks. And if Elias Thorne's story touched your heart, type honor in the comments.